There was a time in this country when not growing your own food was considered strange, when every house had a kitchen garden, when saving seeds was as automatic as breathing, when a family that could not preserve its own harvest was a family in trouble. That time was not ancient history, it was your grandparents' generation. So what happened? How did an entire nation of growers become an entire nation of buyers? It did not happen by accident. It happened because 13 specific lies were repeated so often, so confidently, and by so many trusted voices that an entire population eventually believed them. Each lie removed one more reason to grow your own food. Together, they removed them all. Here are the 13 lies they taught you so you would stop growing your own. Lie number 1. Growing food is a hobby. It is not a real source of nutrition. This is the foundational dismissal, the idea that a backyard garden is a quaint weekend pastime, something for retirees and craft fairs, not a legitimate source of sustenance. But the numbers say the opposite. During World War II, 20 million American households planted victory gardens. By 1944, those gardens produced 40% of all vegetables consumed in the United States, not 4%. 40. These were not farms, they were side yards, window boxes, rooftop plots, and vacant lots. Ordinary people, growing in ordinary spaces, produced nearly half of a nation's vegetable supply during wartime. That is not a hobby, that is a food system. The moment the war ended, the message changed. Industry needed consumers, not producers. The garden was rebranded as a leisure activity so the grocery aisle could become a necessity. Lie number 2. You need acres of land to feed yourself. This lie has been demolished repeatedly, and it still persists. John Jeavons, one of the most cited researchers in small-scale agriculture, demonstrated that a complete diet for one person can be grown on as little as 4,000 square feet. That is roughly 1/10 of an acre. During the siege of Leningrad, families grew food in containers on apartment balconies to survive. Cuban households, after the Soviet collapse cut off industrial food imports in 1991, converted front lawns and parking lots into intensive food plots and fed a nation. The lie that you need a farm to grow real food exists because industrial agriculture needs you to believe that only scale matters. If scale were the only path to food, civilizations would not have survived the first 10,000 years of human agriculture. They did, on small plots, with hand tools. Lie number 3. Store-bought produce is just as nutritious as what you grow at home. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition in 2004 compared USDA nutrient data for 43 garden crops between 1950 and 1999. The findings were staggering. Protein declined by 6%, calcium by 16%, iron by 15%, vitamin C by 20%. Riboflavin, a core B vitamin, dropped by 38%. The cause is a phenomenon called the dilution effect. Modern commercial varieties are bred for yield, size, shelf life, and shipping durability. Nutrient density is not part of the equation. A tomato picked green in Florida, gassed with ethylene, and shipped 1,500 miles to your store is not the same food as the one you harvest ripe from a plant 10 feet from your kitchen. They look the same. They are not the same. The nutrition has been engineered out to make the logistics work. Lie number 4. You need synthetic fertilizer to grow anything worth eating. Before 1945, synthetic nitrogen fertilizer barely existed in civilian agriculture. It was a wartime product. Ammonium nitrate plants built to manufacture explosives were repurposed after the war to produce fertilizer. The industry needed a market. Farmers became that market. The message was simple. Soil is a dead medium and you must add chemistry to make it productive. But soil is not dead. A single teaspoon of healthy garden soil contains more microorganisms than there are people on the planet. Compost, mulch, cover cropping, and basic organic matter cycling sustain fertility without any purchased inputs. Farmers grew food for 10,000 years before a single bag of synthetic fertilizer existed. The product was not invented because the soil stopped working. It was invented because a weapons industry needed a peacetime revenue stream. Lie number 5. The growing season is too short to matter. This lie only works if you ignore every technique developed before the 20th century. Cold frames extend the growing season by 8 to 12 weeks. Root cellars store produce through the entire winter without electricity. Succession planting ensures continuous harvests from spring through late autumn. Overwintering crops like garlic, kale, spinach, and certain onion varieties survive frost and resume growth in early spring. The Iroquois grew corn, beans, and squash through short northeastern summers and stored enough to sustain communities through brutal winters. The problem is not the season. The problem is that the knowledge of how to work within it was deliberately replaced by a 12-month supply chain chain that made seasonal skill unnecessary and then labeled that skill outdated. Lie number 6. A well-maintained lawn is the best use of your yard. The American lawn is one of the most extraordinary cultural achievements in marketing history. It produces nothing. It feeds no one. It requires constant inputs: water, fertilizer, herbicides, fuel, and it returns zero caloric value. There are roughly 40 million acres of lawn in the United States. It is the single largest irrigated crop in the country, and it is not a crop. It produces no harvest. The lawn as a cultural standard was a post-war invention, tied directly to suburban development and homeowner association codes that institutionalized decorative land use as a moral obligation. Before 1945, a house without a kitchen garden was unusual. After 1955, a house without a lawn was suspicious. Productive land meant you could not afford the grocery store. The aesthetic was inverted in a single generation, and food-producing yards were reclassified as eyesores. Lie number 7. Home canning is dangerous and will poison your family. Every year, the average American household throws away approximately 30 to 40% of the food it purchases. Meanwhile, home food preservation, canning, drying, fermenting, root cellaring is treated as a fringe activity practiced by eccentrics. The fear of botulism, while technically grounded in real microbiology, has been amplified far beyond proportion. Properly executed water bath canning of high-acid foods carries an almost negligible risk. Pressure canning, when done with a tested recipe and a functioning gauge, safely preserves low-acid vegetables and meats indefinitely. Your great-grandmother did this every autumn. She did not have a food science degree. She had a recipe, a pressure canner, and common sense. The fear was not manufactured because preservation is dangerous. It was manufactured because preserved food means fewer trips to the store. Lie number 8. Homegrown food is not inspected and therefore not safe. This lie inverts reality so cleanly it almost deserves admiration. The industrial food system, the one that is inspected, produces roughly 48 million cases of foodborne illness in the United States every year, according to the CDC. That is 1 in 6 Americans, every year, the lettuce recalls. The contaminated ground beef. The salmonella outbreaks traced to industrial poultry operations. These are products of the inspected system. Your backyard tomato has never been recalled. Your kitchen garden has never been the subject of a CDC investigation. The framing of homegrown food as unsafe exists to legitimize the centralized system that controls the food supply. If you trust what you grow, you do not need what they sell. Lie number 9. Hybrid seeds are always better than heirloom varieties. Hybrid seeds do offer certain advantages: uniformity, predictable sizing, disease resistance tailored to industrial monoculture. But hybrids carry a structural dependency that is rarely discussed. They do not breed true. If you save seed from a hybrid plant, the next generation will not reliably resemble the parent. You must purchase new seed every year. This is not a flaw, it is the business model. Open-pollinated heirloom varieties, by contrast, produce seed that breeds true indefinitely. You buy once, you save seed, you never buy again. For thousands of years, this was normal agriculture. The shift to hybrids did not happen because heirlooms failed. It happened because heirlooms could not generate repeat customers. Lie number 10. Saving seeds is impractical or legally risky. Seed saving is the oldest agricultural act in human history. Every crop that exists today exists because someone saved seed. For 10,000 years, this was not a specialized skill. It was automatic behavior, as routine as harvesting the crop itself. The modern legal landscape around seed patents has created a chilling effect, not because most home gardeners face actual legal risk, but because the perception of legal risk discourages the practice entirely. Open-pollinated, non-patented seed varieties remain entirely legal to save, replant, and share. The fear is manufactured. The confusion is profitable. Every gardener who saves seed is a customer lost to the seed industry. The lie is not that seed saving is illegal. The lie is that you need permission to do what humans have done since the invention of agriculture. Lie number 11. Modern agriculture made the home garden obsolete. Industrial agriculture feeds billions. That is not in dispute. What is in dispute is the claim that this system made self-provisioning unnecessary. The American food supply chain depends on diesel fuel, transcontinental trucking, refrigerated warehousing, just-in-time inventory systems, and a labor force increasingly difficult to sustain. In 2020, the fragility of this system was exposed in a matter of weeks. Shelves emptied, meat processing plants closed, dairy farmers dumped milk while consumers could not find it in stores. The system works until it does not. The kitchen garden was not made obsolete by industrial agriculture. It was made invisible by it. And invisibility is not the same as irrelevance. Lie number 12. The grocery store will always have what you need at a price you can afford. Between January 2020 and January 2024, the average price of groceries in the United States increased by over 25%. Eggs doubled. Ground beef climbed 30%. Fresh vegetables saw sustained price increases that disproportionately affected fixed-income households. These are not temporary fluctuations. They are structural repricing events driven by energy costs, supply chain consolidation, and labor market shifts that are not reversing. The grocery store is not a public utility. It is a privately operated, profit-driven supply chain that answers to shareholders, not to your family. When margins tighten, quality drops. When input costs rise, your prices rise. When disruption hits, the shelves go bare and there is no backup plan, unless you built one yourself. Lie number 13. You were never meant to feed yourself. This is the lie beneath all the others. The quiet, ambient assumption that food production is someone else's job. That it requires professionals, corporations, equipment you do not own, and knowledge you were never given. This is the deepest lie because it is never stated outright. It is implied. It is embedded in the design of suburban lots with no fruit trees. In school curricula that teach nothing about soil. In zoning codes that prohibit front yard gardens, in a culture that celebrates cooking from a box but treats growing from the earth as primitive. For 10,000 years, growing food was the most universal human skill on the planet. Every culture, every continent, every climate. It was not specialized, it was not elite, it was not optional, it was the baseline of being alive. One generation removed it, one generation can bring it back. The 13 lies are not errors. They are architecture. Each one removed a single brick from the foundation of household self-reliance, and together they built a wall between you and the most basic human capability. Feeding yourself from the ground beneath your feet, but the ground is still there. The seeds still exist. The knowledge was buried, not destroyed. And every single lie on this list is reversed the moment you push a seed into the soil and watch it grow. Not because it is a hobby, because it is the oldest form of freedom that exists. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every like, every share, and every comment helps replant the knowledge they let die. The next vault opens soon.